Now, the Bank of Ghana has denied a purported takeover of the Agricultural Development Bank by indigenous Ghanaian bank Unibank. This followed claims by management of Unibank that Belstar Capital, which together with 3 other shareholders own majority stake in ADB, that they had secured a pledge to the shares and by extending a right to take decisions on the future of ADB. Executive Director of Unibank, Clifford Metal, who spoke on Joy FM Super Morning Show, said Unibank had the blessing of the Bank of Ghana and suggested the regulator had been instrumental in the process.
We've had a lot of engagements with the central bank, and the central bank has actually offered us a lot of assistance in this direction. They have worked with us, and we are very much grateful for whatever they have given to us by way of direction. I'm sure, and I really of this dimension, you agree with me that definitely you will need the concurrence of the central bank.
So you have signed documents from the central bank okaying this agreement?
Daniel, I mentioned that there is no way that you can push for an arrangement of this magnitude in Ghana without the central bank's signature, so to speak, if you want to put it that way. There's no way you can do that because it is a very huge change in the financial landscape. All right. So definitely, we would. And what I want to just say is that I think the Bank of Ghana has been very helpful in this direction.
So, Mr. Metal, when was this written approval given?
The meeting to approve this.
No, I'm asking for the written approval from the central bank. Yes.
Oh well, I can give you the specific date when I get back to the office. I'm just 2 minutes away from the office, but I think that was done sometime this year.
So you had the executive director of Unibank there make it categorically clear that they had that approval from the Bank of Ghana. We'll be coming to the response from the Bank of Ghana in a bit. But Mr. Metal went on to explain how this development would affect the shareholding structure of ADB.
The shareholding structure as it is now will change. What it is that the 51% shareholding of the consortium has now been pledged to Unibank, and therefore Unibank will be the majority shareholder of ADB. So the structure will be for the majority shareholding to be in the name of Unibank, because their entitlements, their voting rights, and all other related issues as far as the shareholding is concerned to Unibank.
Well, a number of things have since happened since the claims made by Unibank Wednesday morning. The Ghana Stock Exchange has since suspended trading in the shares of the Agricultural Development Bank, and this is for good reason. I will be explaining that in a bit, but this is the statement that came from the Ghana Stock Exchange. It says, with reference to Section 7 of the GSE Automated Trading Rules, the Managing Director of the Ghana Stock Exchange GSE, in consultation with the Chairman of the GSE Council, has suspended trading in the shares of ADB effective March 7, 2018. This is to allow the GSE clarify news on a purported takeover of ADB. The investing public will be duly informed of the outcome and resumption of trading in the shares of ADB. Now, what does this mean? Essentially, it's a move. Experts explain that this is a move by the Ghana Stock Exchange to avoid people deciding to offload their shares in ADB in droves, or probably going for ADB shares also in droves, because they expect that there's going to be some volatility if such information gets to the market. That's informed the decision of the Ghana Stock Exchange to hold on and suspend trading in the shares of ADB. Now, the other significant development that has happened is that the Bank of Ghana has weighed in. The governor, Dr. Ernest Adesina, at the commissioning of the new EcoBank head office in Accra, made this clear.
I should at this point respond to some of the news developing this morning, just to clarify that the Bank of Ghana has not given approval to the purported takeover or through the pledging of shares of the Agricultural Development Bank to Unibank. The bank has also noted the challenges in the microfinance sector and would like to assure the public that it is taking steps to address these challenges through our monitoring of the microfinance institutions. We have also held a number of meetings with shareholders and management of the affected institutions. Together with the government, the bank is working on a comprehensive reform program to address the challenges in the microfinance sector and strengthen regulatory and supervisory oversight.
The Agricultural Development Bank has also spoken on the matter. The board on Wednesday afternoon issued a statement saying though it has been notified of the pledging of ADB shares to Unibank, it does not amount to a transfer of those shares. Let me share that statement with you. It says, we refer to the news item on both electronic and print media regarding a purported takeover of the Agricultural Development Bank Limited by Unibank and wish to strongly deny any takeover of the bank. The bank has received letters from Belstar Capital Limited, EDC Limited, and Star Mount Investment Limited, having pledged their various shares in the Agricultural Development Bank to Unibank. It is the opinion of ADB that a pledge does not have the effect of the transfer of ownership. Thus, if the shareholders mentioned herein have pledged their shares together with any benefits or privileges attached thereto, that will not have the effect of making Unibank a shareholder of Agricultural Development Bank Limited or constitute a takeover of the bank. Indeed, in accordance with the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016, Act 930, and it quotes, a person shall not, without the prior approval in writing of Bank of Ghana, enter into an agreement or arrangement which will result in the change in control of a bank, specialized deposit-taking institutions, or financial holding company, unquote. The Act continues that for the purpose of share acquisition in financial institutions, the Bank of Ghana must grant approval of share acquisitions of 5, 10, 30, 50, or 75% of equity threshold. Now, in a statement made by the Governor of the Bank of Ghana during the commissioning of the EcoBank head office in Accra on March 7, 2018, he emphatically denounced as null and void the purported takeover of ADB. Now, the statement continues, ADB is also in discussion with the Ghana Stock Exchange to restore trading on the exchange. We therefore wish to assure the bank's numerous customers and the general public that the shareholding of the bank remains unchanged and customers' accounts and investments are adequately protected. Customers are particularly advised to go about their normal transactions with the bank. So that's these are the events that have happened in the last 12 hours since the story broke about the fact that the ADB or the Unibank had indicated that they had taken over or they were going to take over the majority stake in Unibank. Now, the minority in Parliament has also written to the Finance Minister and Bank of Ghana demanding answers on what it claims is a decision by government to use 1.6 billion cedis of taxpayers' funds to clear the debt of the defunct UT and Capital Bank. But in addition to that, they also made comments on this particular news or reports that Unibank was going to take over ADB. We'll be bringing you that statement or their comment in a bit. But right now I have been joined in the studio by George Jaffe of Joy Business, and he has been following this story since it broke from morning. Hello, George.
Hi, Israel.
All right, so let's go back to the chronology of events. It started off with Unibank indicating or announcing that they were going to take over a majority stake in ADB. And in fact, we had the executive director, Clifford Metal, go on to say what it meant and the implications of all of that. Then we also had the Ghana Stock Exchange coming to say that they were suspending trading in the shares of ADB. Subsequently, the governor of the Bank of Ghana came in to say that the transaction doesn't have the approval. And then the latest is that we're getting from ADB, the ADB board, saying that this hasn't taken place. What is the story behind all of this?
So maybe somewhere around last year, we got the understanding that some shareholders have taken, or they've taken certain significant stake in ADB last year somewhere. And Belstar, which is a private equity firm, had the largest shareholding in ADB. Now, they wanted to kind of have controlling stake, this private...
Assert themselves.
Controlling, yeah, in ADB, and therefore they thought that they could have had a smooth ride, appointing the MD, appointing the board of directors and all those.
But then government appointed the MD.
But government quickly put across an MD, and they thought that, okay, it won't be good to be fighting with government, so we'll accept that nomination that was put forward by government. Let's work to reconstitute the board. Let's have the fact that we are having significant stake in the bank, it should be represented on the board. But we also got the understanding that we were having some problems because it wasn't that smooth for them in trying to manage the bank. So they came up and said that, okay, we want to dispose our stake in the bank, which could be more than 30% or so. But who is the next significant shareholder in the bank? That is government. So government, you have the right, you want to sell these shares. You have about 30 days to take that decision. This decision was somewhere around in November or so when they tried to do that. So till now it's past that 30 days. And we've got to understand that they have the right to select any investor that they want to hand over these shares to that investor. And maybe Unibank was this investor they were looking for. Because again, don't forget, government has this whole plan of ensuring that the bank stays in a local hands. So if you're not giving it out to a foreigner, who's the next local bank that might be interested in this? And maybe that is why these shareholders pledged that they are going to hand it over to Unibank.
All right. So this is what happened back then. Now, there's one other significant issue to take note of. At the time, Belstar was indicating that they had majority stake in ADB. It was because they had come together with 3 other shareholders, which was EDC Limited, Star Mount Investment, and then SIC, a subsidiary of SIC. Now, in this statement that has been released by ADB, and I'm going to read that portion of the statement. It says that the bank has received letters from Belstar Capital Limited, which you indicate has about 30% stake in... About
couldn't be more than
EDC
that.
Limited and Star Mount Investment Limited. But here, they did not mention SIC, the subsidiary of SIC.
Again, the information that we have picked up is that there was some special arrangement for SIC. So maybe SIC got these shares by some arrangement that, okay, I want to take up these shares, subject to getting the money to pay for them and all the rest, during the IPO and all the rest. It could be that SIC couldn't get the money to pay for these shares, and somebody bought these shares and held it in trust for SIC. When they realized that SIC was not bringing the money to pay for the shares,
sold it off.
Moved it to Belstar, sorry. So then Belstar put together all these shares, has that controlling stake. That, again, when you look at another portion of the laws, should trigger a takeover. Because the same laws, SEC laws, talks about the fact that when you have certain shareholding in a company, it should automatically trigger a takeover of X institution.
Right.
But, you know, you don't work in isolation. So you also have to go to the Bank of Ghana and get the approval that even though the law says that this should trigger a takeover, you give me your blessings and let me go ahead. And that looks like that is what wasn't finally secured in writing.
All right. What is the backstory to all of this, George? Because I'm sure you have a deeper understanding of what goes on as far as these things are concerned.
There are lots of things, and you don't even know what to believe. Unibank wants another institution to acquire. Government wants ADB and NIB. Has government got the money to buy the shares of Belstar? Maybe they don't. And these Belstar guys also need money to move on. So whoever is interested will hand over to them. There are reports that, well, ADB also wanted, or Unibank wanted ADB. So it could be a fine opportunity.
Could it be that Unibank spoke a bit too early?
Did they speak?
Yes, they spoke. Because
Maybe,
we had...
But the first story that put out, the first paper that put out the story said sources. So when we sought to get some understanding from Unibank, they said that, okay, yes, the MD told us on our network that these shareholders have pledged So they were more of in the process of transferring their shares to Unibank. But if others will want to put an interpretation, which later the executive director came and said that yes, it's a takeover. But you can't take over an institution, another bank, without the Bank of Ghana approval. So there should have been a caveat that we are working to take over
approval.
If the Bank of Ghana approves, finito. If not, that is not a takeover.
Do customers of ADB have anything at all to worry?
I don't think so, because it's all about just having a controlling stake in that. And looking at what has happened so far, even with Belstar, we understand there have been a lot of reforms going there. Because don't forget that nobody wants to take over an institution that is fallen or is not doing well. So it's in the interest of the current shareholders and even whoever wants to take over ADB that is in a strong position. Because it's not just about acquiring the assets, but also the fact that the bank should be in a good position and ensure that those prime customers are still there. Don't forget UT Capital. We understand GCB has taken on a significant amount of their prime customers in terms of these two banks. So it's in the interest of Unibank to ensure that the bank is in a good position as they work to take over ADB.
All right. Thank you very much. So those customers, the customers of ADB Bank who may be worried that there may be issues with the bank of with their bank. Well, George Raffi says that be rest assured that there's not much to. You don't have anything to worry about. Now let's hear the minority spokesperson on finance speaking on this issue as well.
ADB has always had minority shareholders. The company in question, Belstar, has been around for a while through the IPO. They acquired in excess of 49%. I am not aware how come all of a sudden their 49% has become 51%. The details are now emerging. We need some time to probe into it and find out how it goes through. Again, information is being hidden in secrecy that some of us are not aware. So it's a major takeover. 2% shares that have switched from minority to majority has made a change. It's early days yet. Let us probe into it.
Understandably so, but to the extent that a state asset is going into private hands, are you worried?
Yes, that is why I'm saying that the Belstar Capital has been a player in ADB for some years, about 2 years ago, okay? Through an IPO, they took about 40-something%. So the switch is about 1 or 2% that has changed. We will need to delve into it and find out how that happens. I think that is the detail.
All right, so let's quickly recap the story as we have it so far. As the story broke on Wednesday morning, it started off with the agricultural or the Unibank or the management of Unibank indicating that they were in the process of taking over majority stake in ADB. Now, after they had said that, the GSC, the Ghana Stock Exchange, came out to suspend trading in ADB. Then the Bank of Ghana says the purported takeover of ADB is null and void, and that was the Bank of Ghana governor who was speaking at the commissioning of the new head office of EcoBank. And then the ADB board, in the very latest of developments, has come out to deny the takeover, even though it confirmed that there was a pledging of shares to Unibank. Well, staying with the banking sector, the minority in Parliament has written to the Finance Minister and Bank of Ghana demanding answers on what it claims is a decision by government to use 1.6 billion cedis of taxpayers' funds to clear the debt of the defunct UT and Capital Bank. Minority spokesperson on finance, Kasela Tuforsing, says they have documents from the IMF confirming government is issuing a bond meant to clear the debt. He calls the move a bad idea.
Yes, they have to save the banks. It's something that you and I agree that they have to save the bank. But it's also important that the directors or the owners of the company, of which you and I agree that their stewardship, there was something wrong with it. We also have to take some responsibility for this. The taxpayer shouldn't, because you are actually going to set the wrong precedent for anybody to think that I can set up a bank, run it down, go bankrupt, and the state will come and bail me out. I don't think that is the way to go. So we are asking for details. We want to find out what occasioned the reason why they have agreed to use the taxpayers' money, approximately 1% of GDP, amounting to almost 2 billion Ghana cedis, to service a debt that was not occasioned by the state. So I don't think that is the way to go.
With the directors,
yes,
what should be done? Well, Dr. Mensah Otabil, Kofi Amoabeng and co, you are saying that they should be made to bear the responsibility. What exactly should that form of bear the responsibility?
I'm not mentioning names. Okay?
I'm mentioning names because we all know who the directors are.
So what I'm saying is that this is not the first time banks have collapsed across the world. Let's go out and find the best practice. We've read certain things that was done by Capital Bank in the past. You read it when the matter broke up. Has those assets been confiscated? Has that been sold to defray part of the debt? We shouldn't wipe it under the carpet and just think that, yes, this has happened, so we should let it go, and the taxpayer should bear 1% of GDP. You know.
You're watching Joy News Prime. We're taking a break here on the bulletin, but still ahead in the bulletin, indigents from the southern part of the Volta region protest plans to hive off the northern part of the region. And then the minority in Parliament is once again upset with the Speaker for apparently ignoring attempts by their leader to have the floor. Stay tuned, we'll be back in a bit.
Hello, good evening to you, and time for business now. The country is close to catching the Dutch disease if rigorous policies are not instituted to grow the agric sector. There's a warning coming from the World Bank after the launch of the third Ghana Economic Update. Bismarck Ausa has more.
The launch brought together players from the business, finance and agricultural sectors of the economy to deliberate on some issues. According to the report, the agricultural sector has seen its contribution to the economy decline significantly since 2010, an indication that Ghana might be close to the disease, which often leads to the total collapse of the sector. According to the program lead at the World Bank, Errol Graham, government must quickly put in place the required policies to avoid this disease.
This could be the result of a number of factors. One clear case we see is that the share of industry is rising and the share of services is also rising. And so that's crowding out the share of agriculture. It's a question we're asking because we don't see it happening yet, but it could happen. And so what the report is doing is raising awareness to the potential for that to happen, for action to be taken before it happens. And one of the things which could be done, which the government is actually doing, is focusing more on the agricultural sector.
Mr. Graham is also urging government to do more by way of value addition to the cocoa industry, which is a key subsector to the agricultural sector.
The important thing in the cocoa sector is to, one, raise the level of productivity in the sector. Two, after that, is to really try to get more value added from the sector. So if we're talking about cocoa beans, that's a small part of the sector in terms of value added. Where the value added is really in terms of the final chocolate product and so on. And there may be yet unfound, product from cocoa that may be important for the pharmaceutical industry or for the food industry.
The report also reveals that wage bills continue to be a driver of high expenditures, which makes reprioritization of public expenditure cumbersome. An economist from the World Bank, Kwabena Jan Kwache, explained why a lot more attention must be given to this area.
Well, there's a saying that wages are sticky downwards. So, in a sense, I wouldn't say government should cut, but then usually the share of GDP, there's a mechanism of reducing the share of wage to GDP, and does not necessarily mean reducing people's salaries. For example, if there are leakages, then government have to make it a point to fix them. If, for example, we have more people being employed every year for not really structural form of employment, then we need to look at. So that's the reason, for example, there is a moratorium on employment for some time now, except for some needed or exceptional sectors.
The launch of the third Ghana Economic Update was under the theme, Agriculture as an Engine of Growth and Jobs Creation. Bismarck Awusa, Joy Business.
Ghana Revenue Authority, GRA, says it is expecting to rake in more than 300 million Ghana cedis from the ongoing tax amnesty policy being implemented by government. Commissioner General Emmanuel Kofinti says the GRA is taking measures to ensure the intended purpose for the policy is achieved. The tax amnesty policy is an initiative by the GRA to get all defaulting individuals and companies to file their taxes without attracting a penalty. He made a disclosure when addressing journalists on guidelines for the policy, which was launched early this year. Here's a report by Ebenezer Sabuti.
The Ghana Revenue Act gives an opportunity for the state to grant an amnesty on taxes to citizens and businesses as and when necessary. In view of this, the GRA passed the Tax Amnesty Act 2017 by Parliament in December last year. Explaining to journalists the decision to implement the policy this year, Commissioner General of GRA Emmanuel Kofinti disclosed that government will make additional revenue of more than 300 million cedis if all measures put in place work perfectly.
Targets, we do not have a targeted number now, but we have an idea. The idea is that we expect that if this goes on very well with us, and we project that we should be able to get no less than 300 to 500 million from this process. 300 to 500 million from this process. It is.
He also used the opportunity to announce some packages for informants who would give out information on tax defaulters.
One of the things about tax is equity. Equity is very critical to tax. So there shouldn't be a situation where, from my Mobrowa situation, I'm paying maybe 2,000 a month in a year, I pay 25,000. And somebody with a lifestyle and income bigger than me ends up not paying anything. If you are able to share information on such people to assist our work, and we get the revenue, we have it within our laws and our rules to give you a percentage of that money. And that one, when it comes, we will give you. Except that we would withhold tax on it. Because whilst you are bringing us the reports and it's making us have money, and you have money, you should also be a taxpayer. Absolutely. It's not to discourage it. We want to say that if we have success with our work, we'll give you your money. But then we will expect that you also be a tax compliance, a good citizen, and meet your rule. So we want to encourage you to give us information. And when we have such information, your identity will not be revealed.
The GRA has set a target of 3.9 billion cedis by the end of this year, a target which the Commissioner believes will be exceeded by at least 1 billion cedis.
The Executive Director for GHL Bank, Kojo Adokufo, has re-emphasized the difficulty in acquiring homes is a result of the high cost of houses and not only mounting interest rates. This comes as government persistently seeks ways to address the nation's huge housing deficit, which stands at over 1.7 million. Speaking at the launch of GHL Bank's Save to Own a Home mortgage product, Kojo Adokufo said the construction of low-cost houses is an important way of encouraging home purchases.
GHL Bank's Save to Own a Home mortgage is an innovative hybrid product designed to give more Ghanaians opportunities to acquire homes with a mortgage facility. According to the Executive Director of the bank, Kojo Ekufuado, most Ghanaians are still unable to acquire their own homes due to the high cost of houses.
The issue is the house price. I mean, if you're buying a house and it's $20,000 or 60,000 cedis or whatever the amount is, you realize whether the interest rate is 14% or 12% or 10% spread over 15, 20 years, you wouldn't notice the difference. You couldn't tell me which is which. The reality is that house prices have gone up. And the other reality is that, you know, we live in an economy we live in, and things have a cost and things are expensive. And that's reflected in the house prices we see. So I don't know if interest rates are the only issue. I know normally it's the easier one to point to, but when we do affordability, when we do credit reviews for people, it's more the house price, getting to prove that you can pay the amount you are borrowing. So the question is, what are the ingredients that go into a house, and how can we address each of those components and reduce them in terms of costs?
Kojo Ekufuado noted the Save to Own a Home mortgage product is one of many products to be rolled out by the bank.
Well, so the product is a two-part product. It's a hybrid. It's part savings, part mortgage. Traditionally, what we've done is a mortgage product. So you come to us, you borrow money from us to buy a house. What we've done is we've added a savings product to it, and the savings product is what allows you to demonstrate your eligibility for the mortgage. So as I said, it's simplified what we call the underwriting, the credit appraisal process, by using a savings process as a means of getting someone to demonstrate how much they're eligible to borrow.
Sheila Tamaklu, Joy Business.
That's all by way of business tonight. Many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. Have a good evening.
Hundreds have marched on the streets of the Volta regional capital Ho Wednesday in protest against plans to carve out a new OT region. Wearing red and black traditional colors of protest in Ghana, the mainly youthful protesters argue the motive behind the creation of the region is untenable. It is believed the creation of regions accelerates development, but the group calling itself Asogli Youth, in collaboration with another group, Volta Youth, says a key to development is decentralization, not division. They said the central government should cede its powers and control to the districts to plan their local economies. The protesters, mostly the Southerners, say they will be denied the economic benefits of the resource-rich northern part of the Volta region, which is expected to be carved out into a new region.
We oppose the division of the Volta region to create the OT region. We are opposed to it, and it should never happen. That is not the best way that it should be. There are other better ways of developing than splitting people into pieces, splitting them on ethnic backgrounds. We are against all those kind of edits, and then we want them to insist on the decentralization rather, because we know by entrenching the decentralization process, we will be better developed than splitting us into various groups on ethnic grounds. We are opposed to it. The Volta region is a one land. It's a land. We are a people, and we shouldn't be divided into pieces. So we are really opposed to the redemarcation of the Volta region to create the OT land from it. Government. I believe that whoever is the president now is chosen by God, and then we should all rally behind him. We should all rally behind him for the development of this country. And they are proving to us also that they are listening government. They are willing to listen to us. So we believe that they are going to listen to us and engage us so that the better alternatives for development that we have, we can share with them. Even most of them are going to be in the petition that we are submitting to them. So we are opposed to the redemarcation of the Volta region.
The Minister of Information, Mustafa Hamid, says the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda is mainly to propel the country into a frame that would quicken the pace of development. This explanation comes after criticism from sections of society, including politicians and civil society groups. While some have described the Ghana Beyond Aid mantra as lacking direction, others say it is simply unclear how the President will achieve this vision. But Information Minister Mustafa Hamid believes it is impossible to achieve a Ghana Beyond Aid until there is an opening admission from Ghanaians that the country cannot develop without depending on aid.
The whole Ghana Beyond Aid agenda is a mindset agenda that the president is also setting. You know, even though he has said that there are economic, if you want, indicators that we must meet in order to get Ghana Beyond Aid. But first of all, right now, the president is waging a battle of minds. Okay, to get Ghanaian people to agree, first of all, that we are capable of developing beyond aid. It is only when we have, if you want, sunk in that belief that we can begin to now do the things that will motivate us to get there. Once we don't believe it, forget it. There is no way we are going to get there.
Because there are concerns that there are no timelines, no specific objective, no timelines for this Ghana Beyond Aid agenda that the president is talking about.
Because we should have been there yesterday. You don't need, we are late in doing it. So it is a matter of agency. So if we can do it even in 10 years, so much the better, or 15 years or whatever, but there's a sense of agency about it. So you don't even need to set a timeline because you are already far behind. So if we begin to do the things that we are supposed to do today, we can achieve it in our lifetime. And for me, that is what is important.
So it doesn't matter whether the MPP administration is going to achieve it within the 8-year mandate of the Nana Akufo-Addo presidency.
You know, when the Americans talk about the American dream, it's something that they've been talking about for generations, and it will carry on for generations. So if we have a Ghana Beyond Aid mindset by every Ghanaian, it won't matter whether Akufo-Addo is president or he's no longer president. It will be, have you heard the concept of American dream changing because governments changed in America? No. It is an enduring principle of the American nation. And so if we establish Ghana Beyond Aid as an enduring principle of Ghanaian nationhood, then it won't matter whether MPP is in power or not. Once another government comes and is committed to that dream, or even the citizens are committed, because most often also governments also reflect, you know, sometimes people say that people get the governments that they deserve. Are you following me? So in other words, if you have a motivated population which believes in a Ghana Beyond Aid, there is no way a government will come that will oppose the idea or work contrary.
So it's all about the mindset.
It's all about mindset.
Also, a Ghanaian poet, cultural activist and academic, Professor Tukwe Okan, believes it is possible for Ghana to achieve that vision.
The question of whether or not it's feasible or realistic, it is something that should have happened long ago. How can a people continue to be dependent on others for aid and hope to grow into worthy nations? It is something that's long overdue. It is something that's very welcome, and it is good that our current leadership is having such a mindset. We should now see to it that all Ghanaians get to understand the need for us to be self-dependent. It means we should be self-disciplined. It means we should all be responsible in our various fields of activity and not wait for someone to come and tell us to do something that we must do. Every Ghanaian in every corner should know that he shoulders the responsibility of working to make Ghana a nation that is beyond aid.
I've heard people argue that it's far-fetched. I mean, clearly, we are just flexing muscles with the wind as a nation.
Listen to me. Don't listen to them. When Kwame Nkrumah and his colleagues started the struggle and the agitation for the liberation of Ghana in Africa, what weren't they told? Could you imagine one man and his colleagues setting out to break down the British Empire's control over us? They were considered dreamers, but today here we are. So it is possible, and it is necessary, and it will happen.
Now, for most people, first flight experience could be frightening but enjoyable once one eases into the experience. The mere sight of mountains, rivers and buildings all add up to the excitement. So, at the Ghana Armed Forces Opening Day, Joint News' F4 Evans Chinri engaged the Ansam family who shared their first flight experience and put it together in this report.
The noise from the blades of the jet excites 4-year-old Jojo Wanta, who joined thousands of other families to enjoy the experience. Even though Jojo was excited as a first-time flyer, his mother was not. Joyce Harriansa, a teacher at the Sakumono Holy Child School, said she almost fainted when the jet took off. Jojo, how do you feel now?
Great.
Are you sure?
Yes. Yes.
You weren't scared?
I was not scared.
You were not? Is this your first time?
Yes.
Let me talk to your mom. She was. Tell us about the experience.
I really enjoyed it, but I have to speak in tongues because it got to a time, the plane, I think it was coming down, and I asked them to drop me in the air because I can't stand it.
How did you do that? Were you shouting?
I was shouting, please drop me, or I beg, drop me.
Really?
Drop me.
This is your first time?
Yes, please. This is my first time. They told me it's normal. It's normal, so I should adapt. I learned when you board the normal one, when it gets to a certain level, it's normal, so that's why. But this one, they were exhibiting their skills, so they were giving us the up and down, the scary ones.
Over 3,000 children from various basic and second cycle schools in Accra participated in this year's open day of the Ghana Armed Forces. They were given special treats around the various military installations at Burma Camp in Accra. The children were flown in an aircraft by personnel of the Ghana Air Force, chauffeured in armored vehicles, and taught the 48th Engineer Regiment and the Military Academy and Training School. The event forms part of activities to mark Ghana's 61st independence anniversary, and also gave the children and the general public the opportunity to interact with officers and men of the Ghana Armed Forces. Lieutenant General Obed Boama Akwa, Chief of Defence Staff, said the open day sought to promote civilian-military relations as the military interacted with civilians for them to have a feel of the operations of the Ghana Armed Forces. He also mentioned that it is also to correct the myth surrounding the perceived fearful nature of the place.
Which, in my view, is in the national interest. We trying to demystify some of these misconceptions that you have. The military is made up of the people of Ghana, okay, our kith and kin. And we all want civilians, and we've come in and we go back. But it is important for us to have a very good working relations with the general public, so that together we can understand each other and work.
Some of the students told Joy News that they got to the Air Force Base as early as 5 a.m. But as of 12 noon, they had not had the opportunity to enter the base in spite of the struggle.
In other news, a minority in Parliament is upset with Speaker Right Honourable Professor Michael Quay after he refused to give Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu an opportunity to further question Deputy Agric Minister Kennedy Osei Nyakon when he appeared before the House Wednesday. The Minority Leader was on his feet for about 5 minutes, but the Speaker ignored him and went on to invite Foreign Affairs Minister Sheila Yakoboche to deliver a statement on the floor. The minority then decided not to contribute to further discussions in the House for the rest of the day. NPP MP for Futu Alexander Fenyo Marking's attempted an intervention, but the Speaker urged the House to go ahead and do business without the minority. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo has more.
Deputy Minister for Agriculture Kennedy Osei Nyakon was on the floor of Parliament to respond to questions on behalf of his minister. The minority leader had additional questions and rose up on his feet to ask those questions. The Speaker did not recognize him. He was on his feet for close to 5 minutes, and then the Speaker eventually asked the Foreign Affairs Minister to take the floor and deliver a statement that she had. And so the minority decided to boycott any further conversation on the floor of Parliament today until sitting came to an end.
I could have used a lot more serious word to describe the way we feel. But for now, I would say we are very unhappy. We are unhappy because, once again, our leader, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, was on his feet. But the Speaker chose not to acknowledge him and allowed the Minister for Foreign Affairs to go on and read a statement.
There was an attempted intervention by the MP for Futu, Alexander Fenyo Markins, and well, the Speaker then made the point to him that the House and the business can go ahead even without the minority.
The Speaker, under normal circumstances after a statement, my well-respected ranking member for foreign affairs would rise on his feet.
Honorable, if a contribution, please make it. These jobs are part of the problems in this house. And let us just make contributions without them.
There is a general level of discontent and disappointment with regards to what we see as the Speaker's tendency not to acknowledge our leadership. And that certainly is not sitting well with us.
From Parliament House in Accra, my name is Joseph Opokugabu.
Now, it has emerged that some Ghanaians are engaged in the human trade business in Libya. Last year, CNN released a video of alleged slavery activities in Libya involving some Africans. Foreign Affairs Minister Sheila Koboche told members of Parliament a 5-member fact-finding committee was in Libya to investigate the issue and concluded that treatment meted out to the detainees at detention centers is satisfactory. Java says they discovered some Ghanaians are engaged in the slave trade business, warning they will be dealt with.
The team observed that the condition of the detention camps they visited were generally satisfactory, with the exception of one of the camps where the inmates indicated that they were fed twice a day. All the others said they were fed 3 meals a day. In fact, one of the camps, the Janzu camp, was fitted with a laboratory and a clinic where the inmates were screened for communicable diseases. Mr. Speaker, with regard to the involvement of Ghanaians in the trafficking and exploitation of other Ghanaians, the team observed, after holding extensive discussions with a number of Ghanaians in Tripoli, that our nationals have set up camps along the routes across the desert where they exploit and traffic fellow Ghanaians. During the course of the journey, those who were unable to afford transport costs from one point to the other were handed over to ghetto leaders. The ghetto leaders, who are mostly Ghanaians, have set up camps, ghettos along the routes, which they operate in collaboration with their partners in Ghana. Per their modus operandi, when a migrant is handed over to them, he will be made to call his family back home in Ghana. His family will then be directed to contact the agent or the partner of the ghetto leader to settle the indebtedness, after which the migrant is released to continue the journey to the next town. When there is a delay in the settlement of the migrant's debt, the migrant is tortured and the abusive act video recorded and sent home to his family. However, in the event that a migrant is unable to settle his or her indebtedness, he or she is sent to Ben Walid, another city in southern Libya, and offered for sale to those in need of cheap labor.
But Minority spokesperson on Foreign Affairs, Okudjusua Blakwa, says the answers were not satisfactory.
We are going to continue to see all of these dehumanizing and traumatizing video on social media, which we are all not comfortable with. We want to uproot this once and for all. We want to get to the bottom. So it is vital information that has emerged from the initial work that has been done from the team, but I don't believe that the team's task has ended or has concluded. Now,
I think the AU has abdicated its fundamental responsibility towards African people in Libya. Libya has no functional government because of what happened during the UN intervention. And as it is, Libya cannot remain in such a state of anarchy. And it's affecting everybody, including Ghanaians. This slave trade going on and illegal migration to Europe, all these were not matters that were happening in the Gaddafi era. Even if they were, the magnitude, the extent to which people were engaging in these things, I'm sure, was in the minimum. My point is, AU has a responsibility, the United Nations has a responsibility to protect citizens, protect lives, and ensure that democracy functions and functions well in Libya.
Now, it's a perennial problem that has claimed lives and destroyed property over the years. After the June 3 twin disaster in 2015, government and city authorities vowed never again to allow floodwater to cause such grave destruction. But it appears something more concrete is yet to be done to permanently address the problem. Ahead of the rainy season, Works and Housing Minister Samuel Atachia is assuring efforts are ongoing to stop another flood in Accra. He says desilting works are ongoing in major drains across the country. He was responding to questions filed by some MPs on the subject.
Speaker, my colleague who used to be a deputy minister in that powerful ministry wants me to play God. And I declined to play God. I don't know the extent of the rains coming. But I can only assure you that what is humanly possible, the desilting processes to meet the interim, to give us the interim solutions will be done. But it will be very difficult to assure this august house that Ghana will be able to contain the flooding when we don't even know the extent of the rains and the levels. If you care to know, I think in some of the American countries, with all their underground powers for drainage, when the rains were very, very intensive, there were spillovers. So, right off the speaker, I wouldn't want to play God, but I can assure you that the ministry will not go to bed. We'll do what is needful and leave the rest to the elements.
But MP for Adaklu Kwame Agboja, also a member of the Works and Housing Committee, is asking Ghanaians to brace themselves for the floods this year as he casts doubts over measures outlined by the minister to deal with the issue.
You heard him never give any concrete solutions. He more or less rehearsed what his predecessors have given in the past, that is to narrate what the problem is and suggest what we should have done. But never gave anything. To make it worse, he says that he's been given only 5.5 million to do the silting. And for as long as we are concerned, if it rains heavily, and you heard him say that if it rains heavily, nothing can stop the Accra from flooding. We are aware that there's absolutely nothing going on. Even the desilting is not going on in the scale that can reduce the impact. So I'm very much disappointed in the answers provided. I wish this answer could have provided people living in Accra and environs some hope that there are some steps being taken by government to minimize the negative impact. But sadly, his answer doesn't provide that. So we have to just pray that it doesn't rain a lot. Otherwise, we are all in trouble once again in Accra.
In terms of concrete steps, what else would you have wanted to hear the minister tell us he's doing beyond desilting?
Yes, I did ask him a particular question that doesn't he think that we have enough laws already that if enforced, could reduce the impact a bit. They also decided to almost suspend all ongoing works in terms of contracts that were coming based on this, deliberate way of creating unnecessary tension in the country by saying they are reviewing things. So as we speak, the NPP does not have a single roadmap or plan to deal with Accra floods. You heard him talking as if they are in opposition, proposing what they will do when they are in government. We will be doing this, we'll be doing this, but there's nothing on paper. He talked about Conti project, never even said whether they are continuing or stopping it. He's talked about so many things, structures in waterways, that he didn't tell us they are going to remove them. He talked about building underground drainage system. Well, with all due respect, we would love it if you can give us underground drainage system, but the top ones are not even working yet, let alone that. So sadly, I'm very disappointed.
President Akufo-Addo is urging feuding factions in the Togolese political impasse to commit to ongoing dialogue to ensure the peace and security of Togo is guaranteed. The coalition of 14 opposition political parties and the ruling government have been battling constitutional reforms and the continuous stay of office of the current president for Nyasingbe. Several talks over the years have failed to resolve the issue. However, the mediation role by President Akufo-Addo since last year has helped to bring some stability after a series of demonstrations left 16 people dead. At the Flagstaff House on Wednesday, the opposition parties met President Akufo-Addo on the ongoing talks. They urged the president to consider the interests of the Togolese people in all decisions.
Many of the matters that we're trying to deal with are not the results of just yesterday's movements, but of a long period of history. And unraveling history of a long origin is not an easy matter to do in a day or two. And that the need for us to continue to keep the door of dialogue open is extremely important. I don't believe that responsible people like you are looking for the inflammation of tension or the confrontation in your country that will bring a protracted crisis and difficulties. I've been very persuaded by the discussions that we've had so far of your determination to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis in Togo. And I'm hoping that that spirit continues to animate you. That is, on the basis of that, we will continue to talk and make concessions and compromises that have to be made, not just by you, but your principal adversary, in quote, the government in Togo.
2 men died on the Sogapope Bridge 6 months ago when they attempted to avoid a defective section on the stretch. The concrete around the rusting expansion gap of the bridge has peeled off. Motorists who try to avoid it end up endangering their lives and that of other road users. Months after the deaths and other accidents, the problem still persists without any concrete action from managers of the facility. Maxwell Agbogba traveled to Tefle in the Volta region to meet the mother of one of the men who died. In our reports.
Music from a radio set on the compound of Alice Ayiku at Tefle in the Volta region. The small radio set has become her companion after she lost her 30-year-old son, Ebenezer Tonyeva, on the Sogapope Bridge. As music is food to the soul, around this time, she sits on a compound to feed her depressed soul with some bobobo music. It was around 12 a.m. on the 8th September 2017. Ebenezer was returning from an all-night service in his church. His motor rider tried to veer off from the defect on the poorly lit bridge. He crashed into an oncoming vehicle. The episode is still fresh in the mind of his mother.
He has 3 children and they are all in school. He was the one who used to provide all my needs. It's so hard to feed myself now. Sometimes I feel like committing suicide. Today, I cried for hours on the community school park. His death has worried me. And I'm told it has even not been fixed. They should try and fix it so that this does not happen to any other person. It has happened to me already.
Majority of the commercial motor riders in Sogapope are aware of the danger with the expansion joint. They try to avoid it. That, however, poses danger to other motorists as it sometimes results in head-on collisions. 36-year-old Mensa Dugbaza is a commercial motor rider.
The road is disturbing us a lot. So now you just want to see it in there. You should come and repel it for us. We are there. Sometimes we try to dodge the hole. But as for the drivers, they are not taking time so that we to dodge the road. So if you don't take time, then you can get an accident.
Although there are street lights on the bridge, they are not functioning. Visibility becomes very poor after 7 p.m.
It's about 11 p.m. here on the Soga-Kope Bridge. It is pitch dark, and this has been the state of the bridge for many years now. The street lights here are just for perhaps purposes of aesthetics. For a lot of motorists, it poses a danger to them because of visibility issues. For a lot of the residents also, it becomes dangerous for them to cross this bridge around this time.
Maxwell Lukuto is a resident of Soga-Kope.
The issue that occurred and then resulted in death of the young man in Tefle. It was in the night. He was actually coming from a prayer meeting in church, and I believe it was around 11, 12 o'clock thereabout. The visibility was so poor that the guy who was riding him on the motorbike lost track of exactly where the wrong section was, and trying to swerve, another oncoming vehicle knocked him off, and that resulted in the death. And so the MP, the DC, and those who matter, highway authorities, the maintenance section, they should have their eyes on this bridge because it's a very critical national asset. And anything that happens to it becomes a national security issue. And so I think that we as a people and as Ghanaians at large would have to take serious notice of some of these things that come up and need to check on them as much as we can.
The South Tongue District Chief Executive Emmanuel Louis Agama is aware of the danger with expansion joints of the bridge. He says, although they have received assurances, he cannot tell when it will be fixed.
Several attempts getting them to come and repair that portion of the bridge could not materialize. It's rather unfortunate. We've had several deaths. Sometimes motorists have to swerve that portion of the bridge. I spoke with one of the directors. He told us they will be coming soon to repair the bridge. How soon it is, only God knows.
Residents say the needless death on the bridge must end, and it starts with fixing the problem with the expansion joints of the bridge.
The Cabinet is still in the process of reviewing the Affirmative Action Bill presented by the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. To mark International Women's Day, which falls on March 8, the Gender, Children and Social Protection Ministry says it is working tirelessly on getting Parliament to pass the bill that has been on the shelves for years, despite persistent advocacy by gender activists. The Affirmative Action Bill, when passed into law, will guarantee the equality of participation of women at all levels of engagement. Joining us is Jacqueline Johnson-Quay's report.
The government of Ghana has been pursuing a policy objective of increasing representation and participation of women in governance, positions of power and decision-making through the enactment of the Affirmative Action Law since 2016. Though former Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection, Nano Yelitha, promised that the bill will be passed by Parliament before the end of 2016 under the Mahama administration, it failed to do so. During the 2016 political campaign, the MPP also promised to pass the Affirmative Action Bill. A year on, the bill that ensures a 30% representation and participation of women in governance, public positions and decision-making processes is yet to be passed. Speaking on the sideline of Press for Progress walk and rally in commemoration of the 2018 International Women's Day, Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection, Otiko Afisa-Jaba, was certain there has been steady progress by the ministry to see the passage of the bill, which she says is before Cabinet.
And in the headlines, Bank of Ghana distances itself from purported takeover of the Agricultural Development Bank by indigenous bank Unibank. The governor's brief remarks happens to be one of the interesting developments to a story that broke on Wednesday morning and has dominated the headlines throughout the day. Indigents from the southern part of the Volta region protest plans to hive off the northern part of the region. In business, World Bank cautions Ghana is on the verge of catching the Dutch disease if rigorous measures are not put in place to grow the agri sector.